Hello, my name's Roger Watson and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of the Journal of Advanced Nursing, and welcome to the JAN podcast. These occasional podcasts will be a miscellany of my reflections on working as an Editor-in-Chief, some hot topics in academic publishing, and occasional contributions from guest editors. This is the JAN podcast of 13th of March 2016. Are you plagued on a daily basis, often several times a day, by unsolicited emails asking you to either write for a journal, or to edit a special issue, or to join an editorial board, usually of a journal that you haven't heard about before? I know that these emails are effective because colleagues often come to ask me if they should submit something to that particular journal, or if they should take up the offer to join the board or edit a special issue. However, my advice invariably is no. My advice is no because, on the whole, these are predatory publishers. They're out to take your paper and also to take your money. Sometimes they won't publish it, but if they do, they will then own the copyright to it, and you've lost the opportunity to publish in a really prestigious, international, peer-reviewed journal. I should declare at this point that in addition to being the Editor-in-Chief of the Journal of Advanced Nursing, I'm also the editor of Nursing Open, which is an online pay-to-publish journal. So what's the difference between a journal like Nursing Open and other reputable online open access pay-to-publish journals and these other journals which I've described as predatory publishers? Well, in a journal like the Journal of Advanced Nursing and Nursing Open, two things are common. All the manuscripts that are submitted to the journal undergo independent, peer-reviewed, double-blind process which advises the editors on deficiencies in the papers, what changes may need to be made, and helps them to make decisions ultimately about which papers are accepted or rejected. Both the Journal of Advanced Nursing and Nursing Open, and many traditional journals like the Journal of Advanced Nursing and other reputable open access online pay-to-publish journals like Nursing Open, also all offer this process of peer review. In fact, many journals like the Journal of Advanced Nursing, which would be seen as publishing by the traditional route, also offer a pay-to-publish open access route. So I say once again, what is the difference between these journals and the so-called predatory publishers? There are two differences, and they're both quite glaring. One is that the predatory publishers will claim to review your paper, but they won't on the whole. If they do, the review system is usually quite cursory. The other difference is that the pay-to-publish aspect of reputable journals like the Journal of Advanced Nursing or Nursing Open, and of course other journals are available in this reputable band, separate the editorial and the payment process completely, and payment only takes place once the paper has been accepted. And getting your paper to the stage of acceptance is not contingent upon paying. It's only getting it published after it's been accepted that depends upon you paying the APC, or the article processing charge. In the predatory publishers, you'll note that you submit a fee along with the submission, and in fact getting your paper anywhere into that system is dependent on you paying that fee. Now, the fees for reputable open access pay-to-publish journals are quite high, ranging between $1,500 to $3,000 in some cases. On the other hand, the fees for these predatory publishing journals are relatively low. However, they work on the basis of volume. Believe me, all they're interested in is taking your money. They're not interested in your reputation, or even necessarily their reputation or academic standards at all. There are many ways in which you can spot predatory publishers. One of the best ways is to check the editorial board. Usually it's composed of people you haven't heard of. Sometimes it is composed of fairly eminent people, but sometimes these people don't know that their name is being used by that particular journal or by that particular publisher. The proof that some of them don't use a peer review process was demonstrated a few years ago when someone sent a paper with an obscene title, and that obscenity was repeated all the way through the paper right to the end, and the paper was published within a few days. Clearly nobody had even looked at the paper. In fact, to be quite frank, the people who processed the paper may not have even been able to understand what the meaning of the title or the obscenities within the paper were. So this is just a process for getting your money from you and appearing to give a good product, but that product can be very damaging to your career indeed. As I say, whatever the circumstances, the predatory publishers still hold the copyright, and it can be quite difficult to regain that copyright. So how do we protect ourselves against predatory publishers? Well, first of all, don't respond to unsolicited emails, especially from journals and from publishers that you know nothing about. I'm not going to name any particular predatory journals because I don't want to be taken to court by any that may happen not to be predatory or any that happen to be litigious. But on the other hand, I can point you to reputable publishers, and this is not an exhaustive list by any means. For example, Wiley, Elsevier, Sage, Springer. These all offer open access routes within their traditional journals, and also most of them offer, like Wiley offers Nursing Open, a specific open access pay to publish online journal. So make sure that you're going with a reputable publisher and with a journal that you actually know and you can't go wrong. And usually there is no need for these journals to be sending you unsolicited emails inviting you to edit, publish or sit on the board. If you're being asked to edit a special edition, it should come from an editor you know. Likewise, if you're going to be invited to sit on the editorial board, it should come from a reputable publisher. I would strongly urge you simply to ignore every email you get from publishers that's unsolicited. This also goes for these unsolicited emails to attend conferences, usually in fairly exotic locations. Unless you actually know the organisation or actually know the conference or somebody who's going to it or been to it before, these should also be ignored. They're usually from some of the same people who run these predatory journals. They're just after your money. You turn up having paid your fee and your airfare and your hotel accommodation just to find out that there's nobody there and no conference on. Just ignore them. So the first line of defence essentially is just to ignore these emails. However, there are positive and negative ways you can check. There is a list called the DOAJ, the Directory of Open Access Journals, and it's well worth checking this. If you check this, the journals that are on it and which have a green tick next to it have met certain standards that are required to be on the Directory of Open Access Journals, and in fact my own journal, Nursing Open, is on there and has a green tick next to it. The green tick means that the journal has been established for a year and has actually published in that year and does have a peer review process and a proper editorial board. So that's the positive way of checking. If the journal's not on there, then you ought to be suspicious, especially if the journal doesn't appear to come from a reputable publisher. So that's an inclusive way to check. You can see if a journal's included on one of these lists, but the exclusive way or the negative way is to look on a list called Predatory Publishers, published in the States by Jeffrey Beal, very easy to find on Google, and there Jeffrey Beal gives an extensive list of journals and publishers that he considers to be predatory. You might be surprised by some of the journals that are on there, and certainly some journals have protested to say that they're not in fact predatory. However, one thing I can say without fear of contradiction is that none of the journals included on Jeffrey Beal's list are particularly prestigious. You wouldn't necessarily want to be publishing in these journals anyway. Jeffrey Beal also offers a list of organisations which purport to organise conferences, as I've just described, but of course these are also predatory. But one thing that Jeffrey Beal does give on his list, which is very interesting on the landing page, is the growth in the number of so-called predatory publishers from the tens about 4 years ago up to the something like 800 in the most recent count, and I'm sure by the time that this podcast is broadcast it'll be in the thousands. So this is a growing industry, and you've got to ask yourself why it's growing so quickly. Now, there's no doubt that some of these so-called predatory journals on Jeffrey Beal's list are in all good faith trying to do a good job. However, they're funding themselves on a very shaky business model, and I would worry about the sustainability of the online environments in which the papers are published. In other words, of the web pages where the papers are published. These will not be sustainable if these companies go bust, essentially. So your paper may well be published. the copyright may well belong to that company and the website might disappear. And from what I hear, people still have difficulty in reclaiming the copyright. It's very difficult to reclaim the copyright from a company that doesn't exist. Now, there's a further twist to the tale of predatory journals, and it isn't quite the same as predatory journals, but I'm quite sure it's the same criminal intent that's behind it, and that is the hijacking of journal websites. It's quite complicated to explain how this happens. Sometimes completely fake websites are set up using very plausible looking URLs which look exactly like the web page of a journal that is reputable, and this guides people towards submitting their papers there. And unfortunately, the journals don't publish your paper, they just take your money. In other cases, these companies search about for old versions of company websites or journal websites and use them, because sometimes journals change the URLs, change the design of the websites and move on to new domains, but leave old ones behind. And these can likewise be found and reactivated and hijacked. And it's all designed to make you submit your paper and send your money to the wrong place. So you do have to be careful. And the way you can protect yourself against this, of course, is to do independent searches for the journals. Again, if someone sends you a link with a purported journal in it and you click on that and it looks plausible, do an independent search on Google. If you're in any doubt at all, find out who the publisher is and contact them. Do check that you're submitting papers to the right place. So I'm not trying to frighten people off from submitting papers to journals or even considering authorship of academic papers. I just wanted to give a quick warning about the nature and existence of predatory publishers and some ideas for protecting yourself against them. Also related to that, predatory conferences, essentially the same organisations. Predatory publishers, predatory conference organisers are wanting to get your money from you without offering you anything substantial in return. And then I mentioned the hijacked journal websites, something else to be aware of. These are fake websites trying to get your manuscript and your money, and again offering you nothing in return. So the golden rules here are: don't respond to unsolicited emails. If in doubt, check it out using the Directory of Open Access Journals or Beale's List. If in doubt, beyond that, if you find what looks like a genuine website but you've got any doubts about it at all, try and find some independent way of verifying who the publishers are, who the editor of the journal is, and don't hesitate to make contact. And of course, if you do see anything that looks like it's been hijacked or it's fake and it's being used in the name of a good journal which you trust, then do report it to that journal and they can take action to help prevent this criminal activity. I hope you found that useful. I'm sure that this will be updated in future as other scams in the academic publishing industry come to light. I'd value any comments or additions to this and any information that you do have about predatory publishers and hijacked websites at the Journal of Advanced Nursing at jan@wiley.com. That goes to the editorial office, but it will get to me. Thank you very much for listening.
This podcast was produced in association with youpublicationslimited.com.